Bonus Unit C. Competitive advantage along value chains. In developing strategy, it is important to consider key stakeholders linked together in a value chain. Value chains, which can be characterized as taking a raw material through to a finished product, exist in all industries. Manufacturing comes immediately to mind, but service industries also have value chains. In education, the uneducated become educated. In the hospital industry, ill people become well, and so on. The value chain concept is an important one in developing strategy and competitive advantage for an organization or business unit. There are significant points in this chain at which we need to strive for competitive advantage and develop strategy. These points are clustered around certain key stakeholders. Welcome, manager. This is Victor Marrom, your strategic planning and performance coach. We have reached bonus unit C, the last bonus unit. Please, if you can try to review all the strategic planning and performance management course. It is directly in YouTube, or you can check it out at our Talent LMS site. Said this, welcome. Value chain for industry or organization. Before proceeding, we have to consider the question: is the value chain of our organization the value chain of our industry? This distinction is very important. The conventional way in which the term value chain is used to describe activities within an organization. These activities include inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, as well as support activities like HR and learning and development. But by describing a value chain this way, we restrict ourselves to those activities in which an organization is currently involved. They may be value-adding activities, of course, yet other sets of activities that could add additional value might be overlooked in setting strategy and achieving competitive advantage. Knowledge of these other activities is important to an organization's planning team. For this reason, we use the term value chain in reference to the industry, not merely the organization. Figure C.1: fruit canning industry activities start with the raw materials, the fruit grown, and proceed to the finished product, canned fruit. This product then goes to the customer, in this case large retailers, and moves from there to the customer. So, in this figure C.1 value chain of the fruit canning industry, the right hand column of this figure describes how one particular organization, a fruit canner, is involved in industry activities. Note that it is not involved in all of them, as indicated by the words indirect and nil. Were we to describe the value chain as only those activities in which the cannery was involved, it would start with transporting fruit and finish with selling cans. The problem then would be that a planning team might not consider opportunities to capture additional value by taking in further activity, either upstream or downstream in the value chain. Value chain or cost chain. Let's now consider the term value. Is it really value or is it cost? Does that distinction matter at all? We often delude ourselves into thinking that because we incur cost, we are thereby adding value. Yet we know that value is defined by key stakeholders, and key stakeholders are not interested in cost. They assess value on the basis of the strategic factors that apply to them. Take customers and consumers, for instance, which the industry activities contribute to value for them. This is a difficult question. We're not sure. We are sure, however, that each of the industry activities incurs in cost. So, to that extent, value chains are cost chains. Some authorities of the management and industry analysts describes them as such rather than as value chains. Growing fruit, picking it, transporting it, processing it, packaging it, all incurring costs, and do storing cans, selling them, distributing them, and so on down the value or cost chain. So we now know for certain that value chains are cost chains, and we have to look harder to determine whether they also add value. Let's look at the industry activities from the point of view of the customer, which is a large retailer, like maybe Walmart or Costco. The strategic factors relevant to the large retailer include the way in which the cans are delivered, the packaging of the cans in boxes, the trading terms between itself and the cannery. From this customer's point of view, then the activities that impact on those strategic factors are packaging fruit and distributing cans. As a retailer doesn't consume the fruit, its quality, which is influenced by the industry activities of growing and picking, transporting and processing, is of little consequence. So, a different perspective emerges when we consider industry activities from the consumer's point of view. What are the strategic factors here? Well, consumers are interested in the quality of the fruit. They're also interested in the labeling on the can, the price, and other strategic factors. So for them, the value-adding activities are those concerned with growing, picking, transporting, processing, and packaging. As availability is also important to consumers, distribution is a value activity too. This way of looking at your industry value chains through the eyes of your customers and consumers is important for developing effective strategy. And a strategy for the sell-in and a strategy for the sell-out. Industry activities take on a totally different perspective as compared to viewing them with the eyes of the organization or business unit. It should be clear by now that what constitutes an industry value chain is not always clear. Sure, we can list the various activities that occur within an industry, but this list isn't the same as a value chain. We're looking for what adds value for our key stakeholders, especially customers and consumers, sell in and sell out. We know for certain that those activities add cost. We have to consider whether or not they add value. Yet, we haven't replaced the term value chain by cost chain because strategy is vitally interested in the activities posed and shown in figure C.1 that add value for our customers and consumers. Competitive advantage on a value chain. Think again about the cannery's involvement on the industry value chain, as shown in figure C.1. A technique you will want to try is to list the activities of your industry and your organization's involvement in them. Detailing involvement. The industry activities illustrated in figure C.1 start with growing fruits and end with canned contents consumed by consumer. In between are picking, transporting, processing, packaging, storing, selling, distributing cans, storing and selling by the retailer. The description of industry activities is, of course, a broad one. You need to keep it as broad as possible, while still providing your planning team with sufficient detail to highlight your organization's involvement. But you can be very detailed in your description of an industry activities. You can also point and put down cost for each. For example, maybe in the beef industry, the cost of a kilogram of beef can be shown at every point in a detailed description of industry activities. However, it is usually not necessary for that level of detail to be placed in front of a planning team. In fact, it may only cloud the question of where our organization or business unit is involved in industry activities and what this tells us about our current and potential competitive advantage. The mere listing of industry activities is a useful discipline in itself. Many individuals who have worked for your organization for several years and are part of your planning teams don't have a clear picture of how value is added in your industry. This is because they have tended to concentrate in silos on their own area of specialization, like accounting, HR, marketing, or operations. While they know what they do in those areas and how they contribute to your organization, they have only a hazy idea of industry-wide activities and where your organization fits into this. Hence, the discipline of documenting industry activities via a value chain is an important and useful step in strategy development. Competitive advantage on activities. The first thing we note from figure C.1 is that the cannery is directly involved in a potential of significant activities, a fact that gives rise to potential competitive advantage. Of course, being involved does not necessarily mean that competitive advantage has been achieved via superior performance on strategic factors. However, it does at least generate this opportunity. The second thing to note is that because the cannery is a cooperative, it is indirectly involved in two significant industry activities: growing and picking fruit. Its suppliers are fruit and the cannery owners. This indirect involvement also delivers potential competitive advantage compared to a competitor that buys its fruit on the open market. This cannery can control product quality, a very important strategic factor for consumers. If it can achieve superior quality, it will have a competitive advantage as far as consumers are concerned. Blind spots on value chains. The third thing to note is that the cannery has nil involvement at significant points in the value chain. This highlights the need to compensate for these potential blind spots through effective data gathering, which would involve monitoring how large retailers store and present the cans, and doing market research to assess how consumers' tastes and preferences change. But a canner needs to be very wary of the sources of its information. Its customer, the large retailer, can tell the cannery what sells but cannot tell it what it should make. To know that, the cannery must research its customers or consumers. Otherwise, it is likely to be led to produce what a large retailer can sell at even lower prices. In fact, this is exactly what has traditionally occurred in this industry, with most organizations production oriented rather than marketing oriented. The emphasis has been upon lowering costs to remain competitive. Innovation in packaging has not been a feature in this industry. It seems as though the canneries have relied too much on the information given to them by their customers, the large retailers, and have been followers rather than leaders of packaging change. Developing strategy. Detailing an organization's involvement in an industry value chain can also give rise to considerations of forward or backward integration. In the case of our cannery, the question might be asked whether competitive advantage would be enhanced if it took over the distribution of its own cans instead of outsourcing them. The strategy would be to improve delivery, which is one of the important strategic factors to large retailers. Another consideration arising from a look at one's involvement in industry activities is the way in which the performance of competitors on strategic factors might be changed. In Unit 9, we considered three of these ways: strategic alliance, acquisition, and innovation. Each of these structure strategy options can be employed along a value chain to alter industry structure, industry rules, and competitor relationships, and thereby improve competitive advantage. Let's suppose that our cannery wished to change the performance of its competitors by acquiring one of the large contract distributors. It could then ensure that the contract distributor carried only the cannery's products, a policy that could restrict the ability of competitors to have their products distributed to certain large retailers. Or maybe the cannery could establish an alliance with a large retailing chain. This could effectively restrict the ability of competitors to obtain important shelf space. Another way in which the cannery could employ structure strategy is innovation. It could decide to turn the industry maybe upside down by distributing peaches and pears in glass bottles instead of cans. The glorious colors of this fruit would be on display rather than hidden in a can. This innovation could revolutionize the industry and make its competitors' technology obsolete. Such straightforward examples of structure strategy show how knowledge of the value chain of an industry and an organization involvement in it can be an effective tool to developing strategy and achieving competitive advantage. So, we have finished bonus unit C, competitive advantage along value chains. Please try to make a first-hand analysis. How can your value chain can impact in developing strategy in your organization or business unit. Try to write down some questions. Take some notes of your industry, your type of company. You can put them down directly in the comment sections. I will be very glad to answer them. We have come to an end of this strategic planning and performance management course with its correspondent extra units A, B, and C. I hope you have enjoyed the ride as I have too. This ride has been very informative, very learning oriented, and very action oriented. So please, I urge you to make some planning teams, some analysis, write down some action plans, and develop strategic factors in order to have a competitive advantage in your organization or business unit. Said this was Victor Marromo speaking, your strategic planning and performance management coach. Every Wednesday at 11, I will be making additional courses on different strategic topics and different topics at all. Please, if you have one topic in mind about strategy, planning, performance, or selected topics in management, please write it down in the comment section. I will be very glad to follow your advice. Please, I hope you can like and subscribe to my channel. I will look forward to see you soon in another interesting learning and action-oriented course. Please have a nice day, and I will be waiting for your questions. Goodbye.